How do you kill someone who never existed? She had 8 faces, 7 names, and a past written in disappearing ink. In the frozen heart of Norway, they didn't just find a body. They found a professional erasure. Every label cut, every name scratched, every memory turned to ash. This is X-Crime Noir. Welcome to the simulation of a ghost. November 29th, 1970. The Isdalen Valley is a jagged scar on the face of Bergen. A university professor and his 2 daughters are hiking through the gray mist. They expect to find the silence of nature. But the silence here is different. It is heavy. It is guilty. Between the frozen stones, they stumble upon a nightmare that will haunt Norway for the next 50 years. She is seated against the rock, her back to the world, as if hiding her shame. But her front is a charred ruin of flesh and silk. The smell hit them first, a sickening cocktail of gasoline and burnt hair. Here is the paradox that breaks every law of physics. Her body is burned to the bone, but the ground around her is still covered in white, untouched frost. A localized hell in a valley of ice. Look closer. Beside the body, the clues are a cold insult to the police. A silver watch with the brand name violently scratched off. Sleeping pills with every single label torn away. No luggage, no name, just a ghost who died in the fire of her own secrets. While the valley was still frozen in shock, the investigation moved to the Bergen railway station. 2 suitcases, abandoned in locker number 6, were waiting to tell a story, or hide one. The detective's hands opened the locks, but he didn't find a person. He found a kit for a human ghost. Inside was a collection of identities, multiple wigs to change her face in a heartbeat, silver spoons with the initials filed off. It was a wardrobe of deception. Every piece of clothing, every dress, every coat shared the same terrifying detail. The labels were gone. This wasn't done in a hurry. This was a surgical removal of a past. Someone had sat in a quiet room with a pair of sharp scissors and carefully cut away every link to a factory, a city, or a country. To know her clothes was to know nothing at all. She was a woman, manufactured from shadows. And then, the ultimate proof of a ghost. 8 passports, representing 8 different lives, and not a single one was real. Each one had her face, but a different soul, a different language, a different lie. Who was she? A spy? A criminal? Or a victim of a system that demanded her total erasure? The suitcases didn't give an answer. They only deepened the cold. Among the wigs and the nameless clothes, the police found a small black notepad. It didn't contain names or phone numbers. It contained a cipher, strange sequences of letters and numbers that looked like a map to nowhere. At first, it was gibberish. Then, the logic of the shadows began to speak. The code was a travelogue. N24 meant November 24th. O22 meant October 22nd. The woman had been moving through Europe like a ghost train. Geneva, Paris, Hamburg. She wasn't a tourist. Tourists take photographs. She only took notes of her own disappearance. This was the work of a professional, someone trained to vanish into plain sight. Every city was a checkpoint. Every hotel room was a safe house. She was running a mission that required total anonymity. But even a ghost leaves a trail in the ink of their secrets. The notepad was her only slip-up. The code solved the where, but it made the who much more dangerous. Because in 1970, a woman moving like this through a divided Europe could only mean one thing. A ghost doesn't just travel, it lives in the gaps of the law. Between March and November, she checked into at least 7 hotels, under 7 different names. Genevieve Thomas, Claudia Thielt, Elizabeth Lienhauf. To the staff, she was the perfect guest. Polite, elegant, but she was wearing a mask, made of manners and lies. The maids noticed the glitches in the simulation. One day she was a brunette, the next, a blonde. She moved the furniture to block the doors. She requested to change rooms 3 times in a single stay. Paranoia was her constant companion. She was waiting for someone, or running from something that had no name. Her habits were a riddle. She spoke English with a heavy accent, but mastered French and German. She ate alone, usually porridge and milk, as if she were a prisoner on a controlled diet. The detective stared at the logs. Every detail was a red flag of a high-level operative trying to blend in and failing because she was too perfect. On November 23rd, she checked out of Hotel Hordeheimen, paid in cash, and vanished into the rain. The next time someone saw her, she was a charred ruin in the Valley of Death. The silence of the morgue is different from the silence of the valley. Here, the dead speak through science. The autopsy of the Isdal woman revealed an internal landscape of pure terror. In her stomach, the pathologist found something impossible: 50 Fenimal sleeping pills, a dose designed to put a whole city to sleep. But the pills didn't kill her. Analysis of her lungs showed high levels of carbon monoxide. This is the shocking truth. No one tells you. She was still breathing when the fire started. She was conscious when the gasoline was poured and the match was struck. She felt the ice of Norway turn into the heat of hell. There was more. A bruise on her neck suggested a blunt force blow. Someone had struck her, perhaps to keep her down, while the chemicals did their work. This wasn't a messy crime. It was a clinical execution, designed to look like a suicide, but executed with the cold heart of a professional cleaner. 50 years later, the mystery remains in the ash. Why would a spy or a victim go to such lengths to erase their own identity before the final flame? The autopsy gave us the how, but the why is a shadow that still haunts the North. To understand the fire, we must look at the ice. 1970 was the height of the Cold War. Norway wasn't just a country, it was a front line. While the Isdal woman was moving through Bergen, the Norwegian military was testing a secret weapon, the Penguin missile. The simulation begins to align. Every city in her notepad matched a military test site. She wasn't looking for scenery. She was looking for trajectories. In the shadows of the fjords, she was a ghost observer. Was she Mossad, KGB, or a freelance asset sold to the highest bidder? In this game, identity is the first thing you burn to stay alive. Then comes the concept of the burned agent. When an operative becomes a liability, the system doesn't just fire them, it erases them. The gasoline, the pills, the cut labels. It wasn't just to hide her name. It was to ensure that even if found, she would belong to no one. A professional cleanup for a professional life. The Isdal woman was a message, a warning written in the language of ash to anyone who dared to look too close. We have the facts, we have the forensics, but the truth is a shadow that refuses to be caught. Simulation complete. Case still cold. In February 1971, they buried her. No family, no friends, only a Catholic priest and a police escort. They chose a zinc coffin designed to preserve her body in case a name was ever found. Even in death, she was waiting for an identity that never arrived. 56 years later, science has mapped her DNA, but the world still doesn't know her name. She remains the ultimate enigma of the Cold War. Some secrets are meant to stay frozen in the valley. This is X-Crime Noir. Stay in the shadows with us. Subscribe to the simulation. Good night.
Case closed.